My name is Kenneth Mwangi, and I'm a climate information and an early warning expert from IGED Climate Prediction and Application Center. I'll be your moderator for today. We'll be exploring how communities, beneficiaries, and end users are making their decisions based on climate focus, and ultimately how climate services can improve their decision making, because in a lot of the decisions today, be it in agriculture, in rangelands, in resilience, climate services have now become a critical part of the information sort of puzzle in that. I'll introduce our panelists. We have Deborah Deveskog from FAO Eastern Africa. She is an agriculture and resilience officer with a lot of experience on climate services, and we are hoping to hear from Deborah and the works that they've been doing in the line of resilience, in the line how they integrate climate services in resilience in the communities that they are working in Eastern Africa. We are very lucky to have John Guyo from Isiolo County. John Guyo is Isiolo County Director, and we know Isiolo County is from part of Kenya that is ASAL, that it means arid, semi-arid areas, and how John uses information from the Kenya Met Department and integrates it and passes it to the community. And are there any other products or improvements that they do to the information, and how it works and what improvement it does to the communities in Isiolo. Another panelist that we have today is Kalistas Wachana. Kalistas has a lot of vast experience in user engagement in the region. He's an expert at ICPAC also, and is part of the CONFA team, which is one of the projects that is supporting this webinar series. And he has also experience working with the Kenyan government before and international organizations. And he's always dealt with climate information, weather information, in regards to disseminating it to farmers and communities. So I also take this opportunity to invite our audience. I can see Q&As coming in. The chat is disabled. Yes, the chat is disabled, but please, you can see Q&A down there. Q&A, throw in the questions that might come in. It's in French. Hopefully you can use the online translation that is happening. Welcome. And we'll try to answer as many questions as possible as we go through the series, and address some of them, have the panelists address some of the questions that we might have. And now, a bit of housekeeping that we have. If you're in the audience, you'll find that you're automatically muted, such that you can follow us through listening, and your video is also off. But to keep engagement, please type the questions as we said in the Q&A, and we'll answer them as we go by. To start off now, we'll just go right away to an audio clip, which is developed by our partner, BBC Media Action. They've been doing a lot of content development from many different areas, many communities affected by climate, in this case from Samburu and Marsabit counties. It will be an audio clip, so you'll listen through it, of a community that used to be herders, and now they have to change their ways of lives and adapt to new livelihoods also by being agro-pastoralists. And we are keen to listen how it impacts the women and the community and how this fits into the climate change. So the BBC clip will play now. Welcome all our attendants. Thank you.
Kwa majina anaitwa Dasus Sisai, mimi ninaishi Badasa.
My name is Dasus Sisai. I live in Badasa in Marsabit County. I am married and I have 4 children. I was brought up by parents who are livestock herders. Thanks to them, I loved keeping dairy cattle, as one can get meat and also sell them and get some money. Having been brought up by parents who were herders, I realized herding would be a good thing. There is a huge difference between how I herd my cattle and how my parents do it. My parents had cattle, but I decided to herd just very few. My parents take their cattle to graze, but I thought that would be a lot of work. Hence the decision to just tend to mine from my homestead.
juu hiyo kazi yao naona ni nyingi, ndio nikabadilisha. Kuna sababu nyingine kwa nini.
The other reason why I chose a different method from my parents is because cattle rustling is rampant. But if I tend to my cattle from my homestead, I am assured they will be safe. My parents' cattle walk for too long in search of food and water, which is not a good thing. Mine remain in good health, produce a lot of milk, and by the time I'm selling them, they fetch a lot of money. We decided to dig a shallow well because water was scarce and also because our livestock could not survive without water. The tap water, which we get every day, was not enough for us and the livestock. So we decided to dig a shallow well so that we could harvest water in the rainy season.
Jina langu ni Penina Lororwa na ninaishi hapa.
My name is Penina Lolorua and I live in Leiba Longare. I am 54 years old. I am married and have 9 children. We are farmers but also have a few herds of goats and cattle that we keep. We started farming not too long ago because in the past there was no much drought. And we had a large number of cattle and goats, so we never used to rely on farming.
Hawezi kutegemea kulima kwa sababu mali ni mingi. Sasa kazi ya kulima hawatakikani. Samani mvua ikinyesha.
In the past the rain used to be adequate and hence we used to have good grass cover. But nowadays we do not get adequate rain and drought has come. Our animals have died because of the drought and we have remained with just a few, hence we decided to embrace farming. We get our food from the farm and the food is able to sustain us. When it rains, we are able to harvest and store some food for the drought season. We have remained with a few goats because of drought and have created a small area for the goats and use most of the land now for farming.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. That was a story of herders. It was only audio, as we'd said. It wasn't a video clip done by our partners, by BBC Media Action. And this tells the stories of the 2 Samburu and Marsabit counties in northern Kenya, women from those counties that have to change their livelihoods, way of life, or adopt to agropastoralists. The chat is now open, so you can introduce yourself as you go by and also give other reactions. But the best, if you want your answer, if you have a question that needs to be answered, please type it in the Q&A. It will be mostly, I introduced our panelists, and if they also get a chance to speak, they can just also run a quick introduction to set the scene also better from their side. So I'll just start with Callistus. I'd introduced Callistus before, our user engagement expert at ICPAC. He works a lot with the community and part of the Comfort team. So I'll go right away to the questions that we have for Callistus that will bring out the story today. Start with Callistus, starting with the decision-making process. How does it happen? How does the decision-making process happen? And when should a decision maker integrate climate information into their decision-making? And what level should climate services be developed as we develop these services? What level should we develop the services for them? And when should also the climate information be integrated? I know it's a long question, but I'm sure you have part of it. Callistus, over to you.
Okay, thanks, Ken, for the questions, and I know they are long, but I'll try to see if I can answer them. Good afternoon or good morning, viewers, wherever you are. Basically, let me start by looking what is the decision-making process. Decision-making process can be defined as a process of making choices. And choices can be made by individuals or organizations and at different level. I'm looking at the nature of decisions can be either strategic, tactic, or operational. And it could be either in the sectors, like here we are dealing with climate services, and you see climate affect different sectors. It could be agriculture, it could be water, it could be energy, it could be disaster risk management. All sectors that are very sensitive to climate. So decision-making process involve different steps, and maybe I request that a slide can be shared so that we can look at those processes for the sake of the viewers. Basically, it has around 7 steps. The first step is about realization that either for individual organization that they have to make a decision, and here they will have to define the nature of a decision to be made. And the moment you realize that, you'll find that like the ladies on the that we have just seen, they had to make a decision to go in pastoralism, produce livestock. The moment you make that kind of decision, you have to define at what level. Is it at a household level, individual level, organization level? And that realization is very key, because whatever you are going to choose, it's usually can be affected by climate. So the second step is about information gathering. Information gathering is about finding what information is needed, the source and access. And the information can be internal or external. And in this case, if you see those particularities, they are dealing mostly with the external, in the livelihood kind of information. But you may find that maybe climate information could be lying somewhere else. Then step 3 is identification of alternatives. After getting that information, you have to process it. And you have to overlay either sectoral information, internal information with the external information, so that at the end of the day, you will identify possible actions or alternatives that if you want to support your income, your household income, or food security of a country, you overlay those and you'll find various alternatives. Then you will weigh the evidence given by that particular information and see whether the need in step 1 would be met or resolved through alternatives you have chosen. Then step 5 is about choosing among the alternatives. This maybe or a combination of those alternatives. Sometimes best that can serve you better. Then the 6th step is about taking action. And here we are talking about early action or anticipatory action or focus-based action. It's very, very key, because you can take a decision that is not time-bound. Something has already happened and you end up losing. Then the 7th step is review your decision and its consequences. Where did you go wrong? Where did you go right? So that it can inform your future decision-making process. And coming on the second question on when should climate information be integrated? To me, climate information is a forgotten factor of production because it shapes the quality and quantity of other natural resources. With the right skills and the technology and realization that climate impacts on the kind of decisions you make, be it strategic, be it tactical decision or operational decisions, then an individual can decide how to use climate information. In terms of strategic decisions, these are some of the decisions that goes beyond 1 year and several years. You will find that maybe if you are dealing with the livelihoods in a given particular place, or a country is dealing with food security, you will have to use, it will be informed by past data, that is the climatology of a given place or a given country, to see whether those livelihoods, those sectors fit in the right place. Sometimes you walk around and you find that people are forcing certain livelihoods in a wrong place because climate is really fighting them. So you can use climatology or past climate information to be able to use to make decisions. And part of the strategic decisions, most governments, like when you deal with most governments, they like long-term climate change kind of projections, so that they can see whether the climate change is making certain changes, is creating certain changes that they need to make. For instance, if you are dealing with the coffee industry or tea industry, and you find that temperatures are going up, you find maybe they will not be favoring that kind of livelihood. So the government has to change with the time or come up with adaptation or mitigation options to withstand that. So past information or climatology, even current data can be used in tactics. What are you doing? Like if you are producing energy or power, you can be able to use that information. Then there is forecast, and forecast runs from 1 day to maybe 3 months. Okay, this one is very, very supportive when it comes to tactic kind of decision, and also operational. Then operational decisions are very key, and you will find that the most farmers are making such decisions. What I'm trying to say is that climate information can be used across. You can use all climate information in decision making, right from operational, tactical, and strategic. Maybe coming to your last question, at what level should climate services be developed? Here, to me, climate information, climate services can be developed at any decision-making level. It could be at community level, it could be at subnational level, it could be national level, it could be regional level, it could be global level. Because the thing is, we want to have decisions that are climate proofed. And for you to do that, stakeholders have to be engaged. It's important that stakeholders have to be engaged in the process. User interface platforms are key. And here, user interface platform, we are talking about the arrangements where we can have users, different users, producers, and other of stakeholders of climate services are key, are sitting down to share the climate and make kind of decisions. And the user interface platform I'm talking about, we have one is decision-based and others are sector-based. So it's like in our region, we have Great Horn of Africa Climate Outlook Forums, we have National Climate Outlook Forums, At sub-national, we have PSP or participatory scenario plannings. And these one are supported by sector user interface platform, could be agriculture sector platform, could be water platform. The issue is bringing together the climate services stakeholders to come up with key decisions, or their decisions have to be informed by climate services. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you very much, Callistas, and for explaining especially the processes, the different engagements with the decision-based user interface, sector-based also what you explained, and thank you for that. Now we are going very much to the ground in a county where the two women from Samburu and Marsabit are neighboring. That is to Isiolo County. John, if you're with us, are you with us, John? That I want to throw a question to you, because what has been the importance of co-production? Maybe you can tell us briefly what is co-production, how you approach it with the communities that you're working in, and what has been the importance of you being there and developing such information, co-production. John, to you.
Yes, thank you. With you, can I continue?
Yes, please, John.
Yes, in our down to the Roko people, I would like to say that when we do a co-production, it's very important, because one of the issues that we have, the communities at the ground or at the local level, they usually have some indicators that they usually look, and they have done that for years. And when we
John, if I may interrupt, just introducing co-production, please briefly describe co-production for any new person in climate services in very few words, and then go ahead. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Co-production, if I can, sorry, I have a small problem. Am I audible?
Yes, we can hear you very clearly.
Yes, key production is where we come maybe round the table with the different stakeholders, and we sit down together. We talk about the products that we have. We talk about our scientific focus. We have the ITK, that is the indigenous traditional knowledge. They also come up with what they also have observed, and we talk, or we discuss, we share it together, and we come up with one common information that we can be able to communicate or to disseminate to other people within the county. So the importance of the co-production is that it provides the service providers and the users work together to reach a collective outcome. So when we sit together and do the co-production, we actually come up with a collective outcome, which is acceptable by all of us since it has been discussed. So it increases people's self-worth and confidence, as well as providing skills and experience. You see, in co-production, we come with different skills. We come with scientific skills, and the communities also come with their skills, having stayed in a particular place for a long time. The ITK, those are indigenous traditional knowledge people, they also come up with the different indicators that they have also observed during that given season. And so we have a corrective information that gives us an outcome that we can all agree on. One of the most important of co-production is that the information that we prepare is acceptable by all the stakeholders because it has been discussed. When we take it to the community, and when they know that the information was co-shared with their kinsmen, the indigenous people, it is acceptable in the community. Because you see, one of the problems we have in the local communities is the belief. They have traditional beliefs, and they don't, most of them, they don't agree more on science than they agree in their traditional forecast. And so to be able to bring the community and to agree in our information, we have to do a co-production. We have to invite the indigenous people. We sit around the table. Mr. Caristas has talked about the PSP. PSP is participatory scenario planning. It is a a workshop where we come around the table with different stakeholders and we discuss the information together so that it can be agreeable. So scientific weather prediction with the ITK knowledge and the community have a strong focus on the outcome of the support provided when they are co-produced, and potentially a great focus on prevention. So the result of an improved and acceptable outcome for all stakeholders, where blame is not on any side in case of an offside forecast. You see, sometimes when we give our forecast, since it's a probability, and when the forecast fails, no one is to blame because it has been co-produced by both scientific, the meteorological department, the ITK, the stakeholders, and the community. And so the blame cannot be on one side. And that's why it is very important. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Callistus, did you have something to add also on co-production now that you've been in that field for quite a while now?
Okay, thanks, Ken, and thanks, John, for sharing with us on what happens at the subnational level. I want to, maybe I can share my second slide, so for the sake of our viewers. Basically, co-production is bringing stakeholders together, and is built on the concept of disciplinarity, such that we do appreciate that climate or climate change can mean different to different people. So when you bring people together, you will be able to share their side. Basically is to have improved adaptation outcomes in key sectors. What I know is that users of climate information has been talking about they want more relevant and acceptable climate products and services. They think that producers of climate information, they have adopted the supply side and not user-driven side. So the kind of climate services or climate products that are coming out, they are not in some cases are not accepted by the user community. And we want to have usable climate products that are implementable, because you can come up with climate products, then they are just on the shelf somewhere. So co-production has very important aspects that bring stakeholders together. And as John has stated, we value knowledge from different sources. It's very, very important to get different alternatives, different sources of information that you have to respect when you are building that climate service or that climate product. Then we use different approaches, either creative approach or iterative or service development techniques if you are coming up with a new prototype or new products. Then these strategies will make sure that you have shared understanding. You collectively identify the needs, the user needs, and work together so that you can make those particular user needs. Then there is an element of power and voice, because all stakeholders are represented in that particular forum. Then there is also a sense of ownership and trust and confidence that it builds in the climate products and services you are coming up with. So basically, that is the essence of co-production, is a question of transforming climate information into climate services. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Callistas, and for the summary, summarizing the complicated document with many steps. Now, let me go to Deborah. Deborah is from FAO office, Eastern Africa. And Deborah, if you're with us, do climate services providers, because there are a lot of providers of climate services, do you think they have an understanding on the needs for the users in this region at different levels, the users who are community, farmers, pastoralists? Do you think the climate services providers are understanding have that good understanding of the climate services that they are providing to the users? Deborah?
Hi, Kenneth. Thanks, and good afternoon, everybody, for attending. Well, it's a difficult question. I wish I could say confidently yes, but I think we don't have a very good understanding. And that's not the fault of any individual service provider, because I actually think it's impossible for individual climate service provider to have a good understanding. And my point here is that, I mean, for the whole spectrum of climate, local climate decision making to work, there needs to be a multitude of stakeholders working endlessly together. I mean, first of all, really the frontline staff on the ground who are with the community and exploring their crop, livestock, livelihood decisions and changes that communities wants to do to their livelihood system based on climatic changes that are happening or seasonal changes. And then having the advisory system in place, or the intermediary that sort of can make sure that they are there to translate, adjust, adapt climate services or climate information. And then the providers, of course. So unless you have all of those three blocks of stakeholders working together, you can't really have a good understanding of the end user. And in my view, it's still fairly rare that we actually have all the bits and pieces together in locations, so that we, really have that understanding and the flow of knowledge local. Because I mean, ultimately, every end user, every farmer, every pastoralist have their own objectives and visions and goals in life. So it's not an easy one to achieve, to have that good understanding. I also would like to maybe highlight that, traditionally and even currently, I think there's more focus on maybe the cropping sector and farming when it comes to climate information. And I mean, in this sub-region, livestock, pastoralist livelihoods are absolutely crucial. And I think there is less understanding maybe of the needs of that target group. And I mean, here tools are also very important to make that link to the very end user. Tools such as, for example, the PLUS, the predictive livestock early warning system, that is sort of linking, getting an understanding of the forage situation, the pasture situation, and mixing satellite data with forecasts to understand how the forage is doing. Because as opposed again to the farming community, where in one season you can regain, maybe all the, you're starting from scratch each season. For pastoralists, it's accumulated effects. So consecutive droughts, so consecutive climatic phenomenons have play out much stronger. So there is a lot of aspects to think about when it comes to understanding the end users. Now I see you put the slide on farmers' preference as well in terms of the channel. So that's the other thing, understanding the needs, understanding the preferences of the end user in terms of how they also want to receive information. This is just data from the ACRE project that is operated in currently ongoing, funded by the Adaptation Fund, implemented by ICPAC, WMO, and FAO together, where there was a fairly detailed assessment among the communities we work in terms of how do they like to see their climate information arriving. And we were very surprised to see that radio is there's a very, very strong preference for radio. And as you can see also in Ethiopia, traditional knowledge is coming very high. And I think often the climate service providers or maybe the meteorological departments are not always keeping in mind that it's such a diversity among the end users in terms of how they like to see their climate information arriving at them and the reasons for that. Let me stop there.
Well, thank you very much. And it's very interesting to see how different places, but uniform, unilateral, that radio is the most preferred way of receiving climate information. So what actually is the role of the climate information in enhancing resilience of especially pastoralists, like with any examples that you might have, Deborah? What has been your experience? What's the true role of climate information in resilience?
Accurate and timely climate information can, be life-saving in many ways. If you mentioned the pastoralist situation now, if you look there can be decisions around movement for pasture, movement in which direction to be able to secure water resources for herds. It can be decisions around offtake of livestock, reducing herds, if knowing that it's going to be, if we're going into a crisis situation. Decisions around maximizing the pasture conservation. We are very happy to see in this subregion that there's increasing work around that, and pastoralists sort of breaking through their traditional modes of pasture being given to them, that they actually take the action in their own hand and conserve and plan for next season. That could be regenerative of existing pasture, or conserving, such as hay conservation, and having a contingency for when the bad times comes. So yeah, even in pastoralist conditions, it's very crucial. I mean, it's more obvious again in the crop situation, how the let's say daily or weekly forecasts influence or informs timing of farm operations, application of fertilizer, or harvest time and so on, or seasonal forecast in terms of deciding which enterprise, which crop, which variety, what to emphasize in the land preparation, whether to strengthen the soil and water conservation, or whether to strengthen drainage in the incidence of potential floods and so on. So yeah, there are a lot of critical life-saving aspects of climate information in enhancing resilience of land uses, I would say.
Thank you very much. I think it's very clear. So now I'll go back to the communities workers, to say John and Calista. So I'll start with John. Yeah. So you have all these diverse needs, users that are diverse in your county, in Isiolo. You have agro-pastoralists, you have farmers, also part of Isiolo, the upper part. You have pure pastoralists. So how can climate services satisfy them at their different scales in terms of the time? Some require this information. Pastoralists require this information at different time scales as compared to farmers, because they might not be able to react as fast. And also in terms of space, some people, the different users might have information needs in a different spatial requirements at county level to know what's happening in the nearby county. So how can climate services satisfy them at their different scales? Because they are very diverse users. John?
Yes, thank you once again. I would like first to concur with Deborah that climate services providers has a good understanding of the need of the end users. When we do our participatory scenario planning, there is a process that we call dissemination of the same information. And when we go to the community, we usually give them questionnaires. And in the questionnaires, they usually feel what they would like to have as far as information is concerned. They also tell us how they have been receiving that information, and they tell us how they would like to be receiving the information. We use the WhatsApps, we use media, and we even do the chief barasas. And during all those discussions, we are able to understand what they would like to be, or the information to be. And during the same, we are also able to discuss the indicators that they usually use. And so we are able to understand and even to be able to visualize what they would like to get from us. And we get a lot of understanding of what they need. To come to the question that you have asked, the need of users, the needs of users are diverse. I would like to say that community need climate prediction, which is 3 to 6 months in advance for them to shape appropriate decisions, reduce impacts, and take advantage of the forecast favorable conditions. In our seasonal forecasts that provide probability distribution for monthly to seasonal means of climate parameters in terms of the anomalies from climatology normals, such as rainfall and temperatures, several months in advance. That is what we need most. In my county, in Isiolo, which is arid land, most of the year it is very dry with inadequate rainfall, and most people or communities in Isiolo dwell much on the river Uansoniro, and the water from the river Uansoniro comes from Mount Kenya and Aberdare ridges. So when I'm giving my forecast, I have to do the Mount Kenya around Meru. I have to cooperate with the person or the county director in Meru to give me the forecast in that region. Also in Nyandarua, I have to get what is happening so that I can be able to give my predictions of how the river Uansoniro will be, whether the volumes will be added or not. So I don't dwell alone on the forecast in Isiolo County. When I go to them, they usually ask me, when is the river going to have enough water for us to be able to get water for our animals and also water for irrigation? They also need to know the times when the rains will start and when the rain are coming to end. And that one I can also be able to say doing the downscaling from our national forecasts. Some of my people or the communities in my county, since they are pastoralists, they have to sell their animals in other parts of the country. And therefore, they also need to know the position or the situation as far as whether it's concerned on those areas. And therefore, I have also to give them the forecast of other places so that they can be able to market their products. Therefore, that is what I actually give to them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, John. Callistus, to you.
Okay, Ken, indeed, the needs of users are diverse, quite diverse. This spans from policymakers, planners, and practitioners. You have just heard what John is doing at that particular subnational level. But for you to address their needs, it calls for user engagement, whether passive, active, or focused. And also you need to have strong user interface platforms at various levels. At regional level, you know that we have ICPAC with the other stakeholders. We have CACOs, or Great Horn of Africa Climate Outlook Forums. I'm also glad to report that in this region, we are having national climate outlook forums. I've seen Uganda, Kenya, Ethiopia, and other countries in the regions are also impressing national climate outlook forums. And even subnational, what John is just saying, in Kenya, I do understand that they always have PSP or county climate outlook forums. And the issue of addressing user needs dictated by spatial scales, if you have those particular forums, be it at regional, national, subnational, or even community level, Deborah has been working with the communities in Taita Taveta, in Ethiopia, some region, and in Uganda. You can also have those particular forums so that you can address their needs. When it comes to time or temporal scales, user needs can be addressed by how frequent the stakeholders decides to engage through those established user interface platforms. You'll find that if you are interested in maybe decisions, the needs weekly or daily or monthly or 3 months or yearly or annual, or when like a government is planning for, you see government plans for 5, 10, 20 years and whatever, it's a matter of convening, using those particular platforms to convene, stakeholders meet and deliberate on how to go about it. What I can appeal is that sectors need to also to have sector user interface platforms, because sector user interface platforms can improve the reach, can also improve in terms of sensitization, capacity building on how to use climate information to address those particular needs. I want also to echo what ICPAC is doing, because through WMO and other projects, we are trying to support even countries in the region to have national framework for climate services. At the regional level, we are thinking of having a regional framework for climate services that can even support the ICAT clusters, the interporter clusters, and also support the countries within the region to make sure that climate services address different needs. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just to now go back to the audience so that we know our participants, our attendees, we are together in this. I've seen a burning question come over and over about radio. I guess it was about the what Deborah presented on the most effective way, and there are a lot of reaction to do with the radio as a means of communication. So I've seen it's been asked 3 times by Dr. Pamela, Kaitura, Nicholas, Aboy, and Magezi. So I don't know if Dr. Pamela, you're able to ask this question for the benefit of all, your reaction to do with the radio, and we'll have Deborah answer it, or any of our other panelists, such a way that we can all benefit on the reactions on radio as a means of information dissemination of climate services. Dr. Pamela, are you able to talk?
Good afternoon, Kenneth and the rest.
Good afternoon.
Yes,
Welcome.
I'm glad to be a participant in this. Okay, my question was not about the radio, but I was asking about the participatory plan. But in terms of the radio, yes.
Oh, no, go ahead. Just ask about participatory plan, and then we'll have someone else ask about the radio. Just go ahead with your question, yes.
My question was about the participatory plan, scenario planning, those county platforms where the county directors call in stakeholders and are discussing about the expected season. Bwana when he presented, which was a very good example really of what is happening at the last mile, which is the sub-county level, where we have the users of the climate information, and they really need it for decision making in terms of bettering their livelihoods. Now, my concern was there was the bit of the scientists and the indigenous knowledge people that are brought on board. Is there a likelihood at some point during the sharing of the different knowledge and skill that the scientists could be overpowered probably by the indigenous knowledge at the community, to the extent that maybe the products, the scientific bit can get lost to some extent? I just got a bit concerned there, because there was a bit of these people have beliefs, and at times to convince them and to get them out of these beliefs is a challenge, or could be a challenge. Is there likely that the product that is arrived at could be to some extent leaning towards one side and not the other, and especially more where the science could get lost? That was my concern.
John, maybe you have a good reaction to that. Thank you for the question.
If John is taking time, I can jump in.
Yes, Callistus, I'm sure you've met communities where you have challenges with scientific and community and indigenous. Yeah, what's your experience?
Thanks, Dr. Pamela, for that particular question. We have options. The thing is that are we going to be afraid to share knowledge, to come together and share knowledge? Or we just operate in silos? The thing is that we need to work together, because through working together, you will identify some of the issues are very pertinent or can affect even climate information, scientific climate information, or community or ITK information. Luckily, I have been to Isiolo County where John is, and through those kind of participatory scenario planning workshops, I interacted with the community, and I really learned a lot. Basically, be it science or community-based information is dictated by observations that happens in the atmosphere, and they relate to what is likely to happen, because they have been doing observation for a long time. When they observe this, when they observe wind direction, the sun, insolation, all those, it leads to something. The only thing that maybe they don't have a model that can represent that information, that observation to the focus. But themselves, they are the models to do that. But what I've also learned that there is benefits of meeting the community, because I realized when I was in Isiolo County, we have our brothers from Muslim faith, Islamic faith, and they could not distinguish between a prediction and what the Quran says. To them, it's only God who can tell you what will likely happen tomorrow, what will happen tomorrow. And that relates with the question of dealing with the uncertainties and probabilities embedded in the forecast. Through discussion, we had to adopt the way of communicating climate information to them, such that God can give 100%, but forecast cannot be able to give 100%. That is why we go to the probabilities. And through those particular engagement, they realize that climate scientists are not against God or Allah. It's a question of just using climate information or information to make decisions. So working together can be able to sort of create areas of uncertainties and probabilities in climate information and can enhance the uptake of climate information and the use. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, John, to you.
Yes, thank you. I have a problem with this network.
But you got the question.
Yes, I got the question. I want to say thank you to Pamela, Dr. Pamela. I also want to say thank you to Caristas. Yes, in Isiolo, we have been doing this. We do it sometimes before we do the main workshop for participatory scenario planning. Like now we have one we are going to do with the Turkana community on 24th and 25th. And what they usually do, they usually slaughter the goats and look at the intestines. They also look at the plants, they look at the behaviors of the animals, the movements of the animals. And most of the time, the focus they give is relatively correct. The only different is that they don't know the time when the set will be or the cessation, but the intensity, sometimes they get it correct. And when we sit together with them, they give us their findings, and we also give them our scientific. We come up to a conclusion, and we don't fight or disagree. And that's what I was saying, that after we get that information and they get ours, and we incorporate them together, when we go to the community accepts more than when we give on one side. Thank you.
Thank you very much for those two reactions and how the community is also bringing their side of the information. I've seen the same on the chat where Abdirashid Jama is talking about coordinating between climate users and producers, creating platforms that we all coming together, and that's what you've been talking about. I will take one more question, and if you're Nicholas Aburi, you're with us, and you're able to ask the question you've asked about radio for the benefit of all. Nicholas, are you with us? If Nicholas is not with us, Magezi, I have also saw the same question you asked. Yes.
Hi, this is Nicholas.
Nicholas, go ahead. Excellent.
Yeah, I think a very important discussion we're having this afternoon on climate information services. Definitely, it is established that disseminating climate information through radios has a potential of reaching many people at one go, as it were, particularly when you rely on the local FM kind of stations, which have got very large audience. However, from practice, we've realized that that is not the most effective way to do it. Communities actually prefer their social spaces where they can interact with the technical staff, really to have conversation on the meaning of certain information that has been developed or even a product, so that what it means for them at that particular moment going into the future, particularly given what they are doing and planning to do. So we only have a limitation in the sense that we may not have, say, climate scientists at every localized location or technical people providing extension as such. And in the past, we tried to bridge this by having intermediaries who are trained to downscale this conversation at those appropriate levels. Thanks.
Thank you very much. You've actually led us now to our next question, and the role of intermediaries. But before we go to the role of intermediaries, like extension agents, I'll go to Deborah. I hope, Deborah, you're still with us, to first ask you, what is the role of the farmer himself? both crop and the pastoralist in climate services. And then right after that, we'll go to the role of intermediaries like extension agents. But first, what's the role of farmers in climate services, Deborah?
I think the role of farmers and pastoralists is absolutely critical. And I think in some, not all, but in some efforts, it's sort of the missing link to make sure that, you know, services are timely, appropriate, and in the right format. And I think both in the chat and in some of the other panelists have mentioned the aspect of feedback. And it's absolutely critical that when there is an effort to enhance the climate services, that the feedback loop is also really embedded there, and that, you know, services are co-designed by including end users, that aspects such as the language, the terminology used, you know, have farmers' preference coming into that. Also the aspect of traditional knowledge. I think that's a very crucial role of farmers to bring out what they believe in and what they not believe in, what they listen to, what indigenous indicators they trust, such as, I mean, some of them are directions of wind or appearance of certain birds or certain plants. And there's many indicators that I think they can really also help inform the scientific side, and those two aspects need to, you know, be together, and that's really nobody else than the actual land user on the ground that can provide that feedback to the other actors that are more upstream and further distanced from the local locations. I think also farmers and pastoralists have a very crucial role in monitoring the microclimate, because, you know, forecasters and so on, they monitor the climate in kind of regional, country, hopefully downscale, but it's not always even downscale. Whereas farmers are on the ground and they can really monitor the microclimate, and it aspects for a farmer, aspects such as, you know, the soil temperature, the moisture level of the soil, and how that is influenced by the frequency of rainfall events, the cloudiness or the sunniness of a certain stage of the season. And that's also where we work very much through the Farmer Field School approach. And we're trying to mainstream climate information in the Farmer Field Schools. There is a guide being worked on right now, which Callistas has been very instrumental in. Hopefully will come out. We're, you know, really trying to embed all of this understanding of the microclimate and of farmers, and linking that to climate information. And also we are trying to emphasize that, you know, each community, each group, each of farmers we work with should also have their own rain gauge, should be measuring the rainfall, and both for their own sake to really understand, you know, sometimes it appears as a big rainfall event when it actually wasn't, and vice versa. So getting that habit of monitoring their own rainfall. And from what we have seen also, the Met departments are very interested in getting that data as well, because the reach of the official sort of climate automated services are not very wide. So to get climate information, even if it's, you know, doesn't provide a long time series, is useful for many things. And then the role of farmers and pastoralists also, I think, is just to drive this transformation at local level. I mean, and transfer information to knowledge. Nobody else can really do that. It has to be the actual agent on the ground who takes charge of their learning journey and how to embed the information they get into their decisions. And here very much farming and pastoralist communities are, it's a very collective space. Individuals can't really stick out too much often. It's not well seen. So to really get a transformative change, it needs to be a larger group of people. It needs to become a new normal. And so that's where the farmers and land users also, I mean, they are the only one who can play that role. We can provide mechanisms and support, to push that transformation, but they are the ones who have to own it. Yeah, let me stop there.
Thank you, Deborah. Just to remind our participants, this webinar is really focused on improving climate information and climate services. That's why the different experts here are sharing their experience. It's produced in collaboration with CONFA, Down to Earth, and Focus Africa, which are 3 sisters funded by the EU. So thank you very much. And now back to you, Deborah, again. I hope you're not tired of talking. Now on the next question, which is, what is really the role of intermediaries like the extension agents and advisory services providers? Because we got a reaction that farmers have really wanted information also passed through their preferred social spaces, like the extension services. So back to you again, Deborah. What is their role?
Okay. Yeah, no, I'm not tired of talking, and I hope people are not tired of listening to me. But yeah, the role of extension, or the mediaries, I would like to call them, because we have to also, I mean, people have in their mind a certain image of extension, of what an extension is this, and that I think relates to much to how extension was in the past. But we have to acknowledge that extension is actually in very much so in transition. There is a push towards more demand-led extension, pluralistic system, privatization of extension is not, the future extension is not really how many people envisage extension. And also to refer to the question coming up, there are social spaces and they want to interact with the extension agent. That is very, very true. And when they interact, that's provide very valuable ground for decision making. However, I think we have to recognize that in many farming communities, they actually don't see extension very much. The extension system is not very widespread, and there has been a cut on resources for extension continuously for the last 15 years, and a reduction in extensionists in many countries, which means that they might not have seen an extension worker actually at their farm, maybe even for 6 months or even longer. So we can't assume that, you know, we just have that extension agent there who is available. So I think we have to look at it in that pluralistic system and look at it as advisory services more broadly and what role they have. And advisory services, I would then also like to include the private sector, agro-dealers. Many farmers interact with their agro-dealer more often than with their extension agent. And agro-dealers can, if they have, you know, if the capacity have been built, and we also, if we help, we as in the collective development agencies help in providing the capacity building and the information, they can provide valuable knowledge to the farmers in terms of which variety maybe to prioritize for the coming season. They can adjust their stocks of input based on how maybe it looks, what the outlook is for the coming season or the coming weeks. Other tools as well can be seen as the advisory services system. The radio, the WhatsApp, the media is part of an advisory system. That then also, that's a tool, but then the intermediary, the extension agent, who maybe is not able to visit all the farmers because he or she is maybe 3 people in one division, they can still play a critical role in converting climate information to advisories by using such tools and being part of the design process. Because still we can't get away with that. Somebody needs to do that translation of the climate outlook or the climate information to climate advisories. I mean, a farmer doesn't need to know that there is 60% probability of onset of the season a certain date. They want to know, you know, what crop is better placed to be planted now this season, and when should I plant it, and what should I emphasize on my land preparation? Should I enhance the Fanyayu or the ridges, or should I, you know? So that translation into advisories is where really the extension agents or platforms at local level have a critical role to play. I mean, none of these approaches that have been mentioned, like PSP, we also have the PICS approach, that are being applied in this region. None of them can really be effective if you don't have that intermediary sector of people that know farming, know the land users, and also are a little bit more connected, because that's the other problem. Many of the community members they maybe don't have smartphones, or there's lack of data, whereas the intermediaries, they can at least be part of that online or virtual community in a better way, so they can facilitate that flow of information. Yeah, I had put up here on the screen also. We have within that CRAE project again, the one I mentioned, and I think maybe in the we can share some for people who are interested. We can share the actual reports, because these are snapshots. But I just wanted to mention that we did an that's almost a couple of years now ago with WMO and through AFAS, the Africa Forum for Agriculture Advisory Services, did an assessment in the 3 countries, analyzing and prioritizing the climate change related capacities and needs of extension actors, looking exactly at this. How do they see their role in climate information and climate adaptation? And on the up right, you see what they, from the 3 countries, what they saw as the common climate change hazards influencing their work. And as you can see, drought is by far the majority, but floods is also very high up there, and things that we don't often talk about, hailstorms or strong winds, are also aspects that extension workers have to take into consideration when they develop their advisories to farmers. And the lower one, I just wanted to emphasize how different, again, countries can be, because this is now how extension agents, I think we had, was it about 130 respondents in this from the countries, different types of extension agents, how they get their information around climate change, including climate information. And as you can see, Ethiopia were highly dominated by media, print and digital, whereas, for example, Kenya was quite high on that social interaction among extension worker, among colleagues. So there again, we have to understand that there's differences in different countries when it comes to extension, and build on that in our programming. Yep.
Thanks there. Oh, sorry. Thank you very much for the information and for the graphics. As we come almost towards the end, I will have you, but I'll start with Callistas to just tell us in these drive, or in these all the initiatives on developing climate information and climate services from them, passing them to the end user, and what are the challenges that you've had? What is working? What is not working? What might we be missing according to your experience? We'll have Callistas, then John, and then finally Deborah, and then we'll open questions now from the audience and pick already the questions that are coming in. So to the audience, if you have questions, please type them in the Q&A. It's easier to pick them up from there than the chat. I can see a lot of connections being made in the chat area also. So continue interacting with us. So Callistas, to you.
Okay, thank you, Ken. Maybe to start with what is working, at the government levels, I'm seeing countries recognize climate and climate change as a factor in their planning. This can be demonstrated in terms of signing the Paris Agreement. Countries have also submitted national determined contributions. I'm also seeing in terms of plans, they are trying to integrate climate or climate information in respective plans. I've also seen countries in Africa trying to domesticate the global framework for climate services. You'll find that what I know, Ethiopia in the region has a national framework for climate services. Kenya and Uganda are in the process. Tanzania, I know they have one in place, and I also South Africa, they have. So, and most West African countries, they have national framework for climate services. Moving towards that particular direction, I think it will be very key in terms of coming up with climate information or climate services that addresses the user needs. The challenge or what is missing is one, you will notice that most climate services projects are donor-driven or project-driven. And there is very little amounts in terms of national government putting extra money in terms of promoting climate services. That is a real thing. I think we need to work together with different stakeholders to see that we are failed money for climate services. Some countries are really struggling in terms of addressing the impacts of climate change and vulnerability. And sometimes when they talk of agriculture, they are only talking about fertilizer and the seed. And the seed fertilizer alone cannot make the country to be productive in terms of food security. We need to factor climate information so that can support either farmers or extension workers or different actors in agricultural production. So there is a need of funding. Countries need to prioritize that. And maybe last but not least is that user engagement is very key in this work, because sometimes when you leave a space for only climate scientists, you find that the users get lost on the way. We need to work together so that we can come up with bespoke climate services that can be used in decision making. Thank you.
John, to you.
Thank you for giving me at least another chance. I would also start with what is working in the county where I am. Community have started to appreciate and to accept the information, especially where the climate change is concerned. And for them to accept this is because of some of the species they also used to see long time ago are no longer there. Some of the indicators, especially in the part of plants that they used to see, they have already gone. And so they have started to accept that there is a climate change that has removed such things. And therefore they have also started to recognize meteorological information. And this I can ascertain because most of them calls or make calls to inquire when the season is about to start and to inquire the situation as far as weather is concerned. And that tells me that they have started to accept our information. What also is working well is that Kenya Meteorological Department has rewinding radios, as Deborah have said that it's a good way of passing information. This rewinding radios does not need batteries or be connected to power. You only need to rewind them. And so when we give them to the pastoralists who are down the river grazing, they can be able to listen to any alert or any warning in case the river Uasonyiro swells up, and they can be able to evacuate from the river. And therefore it's a good way of passing the information. I have delivered about 30 of them to different community members who cannot afford even to buy batteries, and that one has also worked well. We have our net radio stations, although they have temporary closed, which give information in the language of those people, and so they appreciate because they can receive the information well. What is not working, one of them is brief to some of the communities, the traditional briefs, and also religious brief, like the Muslim people believe that it's only God who can be able to predict. And so some of them cannot agree to the information, or they can't even listen to our information. Another thing is that due to drought, sometimes like now it has taken our region very hard. Most of the people migrate from their areas of residence for the sake of water and also pastures. And so where we have installed those rain gauges or any meteorological equipment is left unattended, and we don't get the information from such stations. And maybe if we can get automatic equipment, this problem can be solved. Sometimes because of the fast area of the county, the repair and inspection of such equipment take a long time. We don't have finances to do that. And some of the sensors sometimes are usually covered by dust, and the information that we receive sometimes may not be very accurate or very correct. And therefore we need maybe a program whereby we can be able to be doing inspections and repairs of such things. So what is missing is finances to do the training. We lack the training. When the people migrate or shift, they are newcomers in such a place. They need to be trained on how to carry out the observations. They need to be capacity builded. And lastly, what is missing is equipment, which can also assist, especially the automatic weather stations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, John, from also a MET perspective on the need of data and maintaining the data collection systems that are really lacking in many parts of not only Kenya. This is also the case in many parts of IGAD. So I'll go to Deborah. What can we do better? What is missing and what is working, what is not working in climate services in your area?
Well, first, what is working, I would like to highlight the change I've seen over the last number of years in terms of really talking about climate services and climate information. I mean, I've been with the FAO team for now almost 20 years, and we thought we were doing a lot of on climate all the time. But what we have focused on, and what also Extension very much have focused on, is sort of adapting to a changing climate, the climate change trajectory, and sort of adjusting farming practices, soil and water conservation, conservation agriculture, maximizing use of water and so on. It's sort of, but the actual climate services and embedding climate information, I feel is fairly recent that it has really taken off. But I do think right now in most programs, in most intervention, in most efforts, that is embedded. So I think that's working, and that will create the change, hopefully faster rather than slower. In terms of what is not working is, I mean, we are struggling to explain to communities and so on this certain level of uncertainty in climate prediction. It's very difficult for the farmers and the land users to understand that, and often the feedback is that it was not very accurate. They might believe it's not very reliable, and there is certain uncertainty there, and we all need to find a way around understanding that it's not set in stone, but it's giving very important indications that can provide very critical information. And then normally I'm very much for soft skills and soft solutions as opposed to hardware. But really, the last few years being out in the field around this issue, I have also started to recognizing yes, the lack of infrastructure for climate data, and I'm very much for the expansion of the automated weather stations. I mean, the lack of data is creating bottlenecks, especially when it comes to developing historical timelines for farmers, localized historical data for them to understand how their climate is actually changing. And yeah, station data has very critical roles to play in all of that. So yeah.
Thank you, Deborah. Before you put down your thinking cap, I know, let me just keep it on by asking you a question, a follow-up question. I can see Pamela has asked a question about climate information versus gender. In your experience, your 20 years experience, have you found that there's a challenge, or there's a producers, how can producers of such information integrate gender matters to engage the users? And does really gender affect how climate information are taken by the different users? It's a difficult one, but I'm sure you've experienced some of that in your resilience work.
Well, some of the things we've talked around today, the feedback in terms of designing and adjusting the language and the narrative. I mean, different advisors speak differently, maybe to men and women. Talking about maybe the income and the monetary aspects might resonate more with men sometimes, whereas talking about the household, food security situation and what the coming season might mean for affected children might resonate to another group. So just adjusting sort of the language is one aspect, but then tools and modalities for reaching out also really needs to be an assessment of who is listening to which radio station, who is having a smartphone or not, who is even having a phone at all, because there's still sometimes a higher level of technology access for men than for women. So when there is a discussion on tools to reach out, I think it's very, very important that is followed with an assessment of the availability and the access across different groups, including also youth, not just women. But we can't get away from the fact that actually a majority of farmers are women out there. So our attention should really be on ensuring that we have gender smart climate services, because that's how we're going to get the change in decision making at the local level.
Thank you very much, and very good answers and eye-opening. We have just about 3 minutes to the end of this very interesting webinar, and there are still a lot of questions that are coming. I think I'll throw it to Neema Kitasho. Neema, are you able to ask the question for the benefit of everyone? Will you like to ask this question live?
Hey, yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Please go ahead.
Well, thank you. I mean, this is a very good topic of discussion, and it's a very interesting one. And my concern was just like, there are many types of climate information that we can give, for instance, information on maybe a climate disaster that's about to happen, or for preparation to handle any disaster or any hazard and so. But also there are information targeting on projections of how we are expecting the climate to be in the next months or in the production period or growing season. So my concern was like, what type of information do we really give these people at local level to their understanding? Do we interpret this climate information into a meaningful way that they can actually understand it? Because saying a trend of rainfall is going to drop down, maybe it's not at its specific a consumable way to a local person. So do we really go further to interpreting what does this climate information mean to this person so that it can be of heavy value to them? So that was my concern. I don't know, maybe it has been answered earlier, but
yes, thank you very much. Yes, it was answered, and thank you for the question. That was really the role of intermediaries and also social spaces that the communities are really comfortable with. The co-production, which Calista also mentioned about co-production, PSP, all those techniques, and I'm sure you've benefited from all those techniques that our presenters have shared. It's 3:30 our time, which was the end of the webinar. So we'll just close it, and we'll really thank you. We've seen a lot of interest, up to 90 people attending at the same time. We appreciate your engagement, all those questions. Please take emails down that you have shared and do follow up with the different experts that are sharing very useful information. And thank you all for your engagement. We'll be having our next webinar that will be coming in the next month. So look out for that. We'll announce that, and which will lead really to the COP. With that, I don't think there are any more announcements for that, but just to thank everyone for your engagement, to the panelists, Deborah, John, and Callistas, and everyone who was able to interact with us and follow with us. Thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of your day.